Shinran's Originality. Notes on Essentials of Faith alone consists of quotations in Chinese from the Pure Land Buddhist canon, together with detailed explanations of their meaning and significance in Japanese. It is often pointed out, however, that Shinran's interpretations do not always correspond with the original meaning of the passages. This is usually explained as indicating that Shinran had arrived at his own personal understanding, which differed from that of the accepted Pure Land teaching. It is not enough, however, simply to recognize that those differences exist, for not only did Shinran hold the tradition in profound reverence, but he also had extensive training in Chinese, and these two facts more than ensure that he knew well the literal meaning of the passages. We must go on to ask, then, what it was that compelled him to give bold new interpretations that departed from, and at times even contradicted, the traditional understandings, interpretations that at points might be said to be forced, unnatural, and unjustified by the Chinese text. One of the most fundamental and crucial instances of such a difference can be found in Shinran's interpretation of the passage from the larger sutra expressing the fulfillment of the 18th vow, quote, "All sentient beings, as they hear the name, realize even one thought moment of Shinjin and joy, which is directed to them from Amida's sincere mind, and inspiring to be born in that land, they then attain birth and dwell in the stage of non-retrogression." Close quote. In the sutra, this passage means that one is born in the Pure Land after life in this world has ended, and there comes to dwell in the stage of non-retrogression. As we have seen, however, according to Shinran's interpretation, quote, "Then they attain birth," means that when a person realizes Shinjin, he is born immediately. To be born immediately is to dwell in the stage of non-retrogression. Close quote. This teaching, that one could attain birth and dwell in the stage of non-retrogression in this life, had never before appeared in the history of Pure Land Buddhism in India, China, or Japan, and it clearly contradicts the traditional explanations. Some historians of Buddhist thought have been highly critical of Shinran, stating that he makes light of the basic texts by quoting from them arbitrarily without the least regard for the context and original meaning. However, since there was no outside pressure which forced Shinran to make such interpretations, what made it necessary for him to do so was undoubtedly something spiritual that came from within himself. This fact requires careful consideration, for it involves the special quality of religious awakening in Buddhism. What is called satori, or enlightenment, is said to be a wholly personal and direct kind of knowing. It is the realization of suchness, or tathata, occurring within one's total being, and not dependent upon any kind of outside authority or external power, even if it be an enlightened master or a Buddha. This was the basic experience of Sakyamuni, of Nagarjuna, Asanga, and Vasubandhu, and of great Zen masters. The Lankavatara Sutra calls it, quote, "the realization of wisdom of self-knowledge." What Shinran calls Shinjin also falls within this purview. He came to know with certainty, having deeply touched the heart of Amida that is one with formless and nameless Dharma body, that Shinjin constitutes the attainment of non-retrogression. It is not just a subjective feeling. In fact, all traces of subjectivity, intellectual or otherwise, have been swept away, and all kinds of self-centered notions have been purged in his fundamental realization as a foolish being. While Shinran speaks as a foolish being, he is now contained within the wisdom of Amida. Therefore, what he says comes from that transcendental reality. In short, Shinran now reads the sutra, which contains the words of Sakyamuni, through the eyes of the wisdom of Amida, the Dharma body as compassionate means, which is the source and inspiration of all sutras. The wisdom of Amida from which he speaks transcends the conventional words and logic by which Amida's primal vow is taught, and goes to the very foundation of existence itself, and even beyond it, to timeless and immeasurable life. Emerging from the depth of Amida's wisdom, which is fundamental, Shinran articulated a fresh and original vision of what it means to be truly human. To understand the Buddha's teaching, one cannot merely follow the words of the scriptures. One must go deep into the source from which they came. In Shinran, this was accompanied in Shinjin, where he became identified with Amida's wisdom. In a most real sense, then, Shinran, the radical reformer, was true to the heart of the Pure Land tradition. No one can maintain a living tradition without delving deeply into its source, and no one can extend it into the future by making light of the inherited tradition. Shinran plunged into the source of the Pure Land teaching more deeply than anyone before or since, and as a result, it was only natural that his radical interpretations went beyond traditional Pure Land teachings. He thus established the Pure Land teaching firmly in the fundamental position of Mahayana Buddhism, a position of deep penetration into timelessness in the present moment, based upon the experience of twofold Dharma body.